And of course, it always shows up later on me for me than you guys, I think.
You got it.
We're live?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to another Facebook Live with Dr. Nelva Bryant. Today, we are bringing back a true friend to our program, which is Rochelle
Michelle.
Watkins Rogers. She is a consultant as well as a former zoo professional who helped to schedule the animals and where they should go. But instead of me stumbling along my memory, let me read a bio to introduce everyone formally to Rochelle. So Rochelle Watkins Rogers is a records and permit specialist, as well as a consultant. She has years of professional experience in animal transport, permit applications, logistics, and animal care. Rochelle's passion is helping people to improve animal transport for animal welfare, animal records management, and mentoring zoological professionals about permits or best practices. She also works with private sector individuals or facilities that wish to improve their animal transport logistics or permits and records management methods. That being said, anything applicable to live animal transport for exotic wildlife is also applicable to domestic animal transport. The only difference with zoo animals is they are much more specialized in their needs and crate designs if an air kennel doesn't apply. Also, zoos prefer to use more direct flights with the preparation prior to shipping, which is more extensive. Everyone, please help me welcome Rochelle Watkins Rogers. Yay! Now, by this time, Dr. Bryant, we should have our clap button.
We should. Okay. I have this cheap thing here, and I apologize. I did order something, Greta, but guess what? I'm not the most savvy person about putting it together and connecting. So
Okay.
if you want to see, there's part of a, you can't see here. There's a part of a thing here that's supposed to hold the microphone is there. I'm just really bad. I just need help. That's all. I'm not the most technical. IT tech, whatever. That's not
911.
Yeah, I need help. So yeah, very happy to have you back with us again, Rochelle. And I'm sorry if I trip up and say Rachel because it's
spelt that way. There's an accent over the E, but you can't see
I know. But I've known Rochelle for quite some time, and just really a high regard for you. Just be aware of that. I'm trying to think. We met because I was interested in the animal transportation course for zoo animals, and that's how we got connected. Yes, and Steve, yes, and that's how it connected. And because of you, I'd be honest with you, I have been able to provide presentations at a lot of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums meetings. Upcoming soon. Well, that's coming up soon again. And then the Association of Zoo Veterinarians, I'll be doing something with them soon too. So you kind of, okay, yes, it was Steve Olson, who's an awesome guy, but meeting you've kind of opened up a lot of doors for me. So I want you to know I really appreciate it.
Well, today, ladies, I'm sitting here looking at all. I'm looking at all the controls and the things I have written out, and I'm like, oh my God, we're doing things differently. We're starting right off with Rochelle, which is perfect.
We're gonna wing it today because honestly, I think it's gonna be a fascinating talk on the things that we're doing. I like the topic for today. It's definitely beneficial with basically disaster preparedness, emergency preparedness with pets or other animals too. Extremely important. Yes. Before we go into a little bit with Rochelle, I just want to mention something that I have experienced, or just give some FYI information you guys know. Back with Hurricane Katrina, the aftermath of that and the devastation that it caused in Louisiana, really, with the aftermath, made a lot of changes, federal changes with federal policies regarding the transportation of animals during disasters. So a lot of changes happened since there. Hurricane Katrina for myself was very significant because I actually was in the United States Public Health Service at the time, and myself and quite a few other veterinarians deployed to these efforts for Hurricane Katrina. And honestly, it was it was an amazing thing because they developed an animal shelter in this horse arena I think we were in Baton Rouge, but they developed a makeshift animal shelter, and we were there working with plenty of other folks to assist in these efforts, and it was amazing. I had the pleasure of managing the section where you help to reunite the pet owner with the pets. And I mean, a lot of times you didn't have much to go on. Going into the location, they would take photographs of the pets that were there, and owners would come in trying to see if this is my dog and whatever and stuff. And so it was great. There was some great stories of reuniting pets together, hearing stories of where the pet was rescued, and they said it was on the kitchen counter, and it was rescued from there. And they said, oh, there was, all it had to eat was like potato chips, but the pet, some of them survived during it all. But it was amazing venture, and just amazing to see. After a while, to be honest with you, there were some veterinarians that really the stress and everything that was dealing with was overwhelming for them. You had to decompress once you left that environment. But to be honest with you, overall, it was one of the best things I could have done as far as feeling like I helped with something. So it was a very rewarding experience. But like I said, a lot of changes as far as the federal policies regarding the evacuation of animals changed after that, because I don't know if you guys know, a lot of the facilities say if they rescued the person, they left the animals behind. They were like the second nature, unfortunately. So I'm glad that you're here, Rochelle, so we can kind of prepare people, because again, depending on where you live, you don't do it. And I'll be honest, I hate to say it, I don't really have a preparedness plan for my own dog. So please, it's going to be enlightening for all of us.
Well, before we go in,
Sure.
and looks like Rochelle is chomping at the bit to share her knowledge, I just want to set us all up so that everyone knows what we're talking about, and then we can go into it full style. But since Dr. Bryant, you're seen all over the country, there's you guys both mentioned in our prior talk that there's several seasons. There's flood season, there's tornado season, there's fire season. So, everything that we're saying can go towards any of these things. And I also want to share that a lot of information that I'm going to use today is going to come from the Red Cross, because that's who everybody calls when things go down. So I'm going to state some facts first, and then we'll go into our conversation, and that will kind of help us out. But from the Red Cross website, they actually state there's a chance of 12 to 17 named storms this year, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration predictions for the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season, which officially runs from June 1st to November 30th. 5 to 9 storms could become hurricanes, and we usually see them in August, September, and the beginning of October. Decide how to best protect your home from high winds and flooding. Plan how you will evacuate and how you will shelter safely at home. Take 3 important steps. And these 3, I have to reiterate, are really for all those seasons. Get a kit, which means make an emergency kit, make a plan, and be informed. American Red Cross has information and steps for older adults, people with disabilities, and pets. The Red Cross encourages people to develop emergency preparedness plans for themselves and their pets. When possible, Red Cross shelter workers will do all they can to accommodate domestic pets comfortably. However, depending on the situation, pets may need to be housed in a different location. Service animals that assist people with disabilities are allowed in Red Cross shelters always. So, the first thing they start talking about is guidance for their emergency plan. So I guess the first thing we should probably talk about is create an emergency kit. Or we can talk about making a plan and then being informed. So there's 3 basic areas that are all great topics that I'm sure we're going to dive into. So I'll let you guys choose which one you want to start with first.
Rochelle, I'll leave it up to you. You hit it.
Oh, wow. Well, people are probably more familiar with making themselves a kit. They may not have made their pets or their animals a kit. In zoos and exotic animal facilities, or even people that have exotic pets at home, like snakes or animals that have special diets, it's really important to make sure that you have adequate medications, food, any kind of materials or supplies that you need for the care of the animal, bedding, those types of things in advance of the storm. Because, like for people, they used to say, be prepared to take care of yourself for 3 days. I think now they've extended that to maybe a week, because sometimes storms are so severe that it's such a large impact has happened that it takes the first responders a long time to get to you. And they'll do 3 passes. One, just to see, what the extent of the damage, who's alive and who needs to get out immediately. 2, to see if they can come back and rescue people that they passed by the first time. And usually the last pass through is for recovery of people that didn't make it. So, and I don't know, it's probably different in each state depending on your infrastructure of your emergency management department, at what point the pets get taken out. And that's usually in partnership with animal welfare groups. And even in the zoo community, we work with animal welfare groups, wildlife rehab groups. And we get special training through federal agencies to help and assist, like if there's an oil spill or something of that effect, because you can't go into the scene to help even unless you're trained and you have proper identification saying that you have been trained and you're authorized to show up at a site like that. So even just trying to help, you have to have the proper training and authority to do that. Even if you're an employee of the zoo, you're not allowed to be out on the street if there's a curfew. Even if your animal needs to go to the vet, if there's a curfew, you have to have a reason, and you have to be able to prove why you're out on the street, or you could be arrested. So when it's that strong of a reason, everybody has to have their ducks in a row in advance of why you need to do something and how you go about doing it legally.
Right. Well, being prepared, I can tell, like you're saying, again, I'm in Georgia. The only time I've actually, to be honest with you, I took a course for my MPH program that was my degree. There was a course on emergency preparedness and everything, and they required us to develop a plan. At the time, I didn't have my dog or anything like that, but it was still detailed, because you have to think about the emergency. Say if your emergency, and for my child at the time, he was in school and I'm on another cross side of town, you had the plan of what you're going to do with everything. So it's very detailed. So again, if I would have added in, if I had a dog at that time, it would have been even more detailed, because, what if, I don't know, trying to find someone to take care of your pet and throughout the situation. One thing I do remember from that class, it said, it was a reminder for certain things as far as, and we may be bouncing around, so I apologize if we are, but one thing it said is, say if people have their pets outside, some people, what they would do is they would chain their pets up outside so they wouldn't leave. But think of the risk they put their pet into by now you've got them tethered to something. Yeah. And if it's a flood, God forbid, they're going to drown. So it was just like, there was just certain little things they started saying that you need to start being aware of. But I don't know how you want to do it. Like I said, Greta, I don't know how you want to have the conversation, if you want to talk about kits, preparation tips or anything like that. But one thing that stuck out me, like I said, from taking that course, is that there were certain things pet owners needed to be aware of course, during certain situations, of what to and not to do with their pets and everything, if they're not home, kind of thing. Right. And there were also, I think the Red Cross might have them, but they would always recommend also put a label. There's labels you can put on your, say, your front door or window up front to show there is a pet inside if you ever leave your pet. So they'll know something in there and everything that needs care for. So just some things like that.
As far as that label, I know that ASPCA has them on their website, so people can easily download them if they want paper ones that they can tape on or order them from the ASPCA. It basically is a label that says, I am a pet owner and I have, you can choose a dog or a cat, or you can fill in what other animal is in there. And then that'll let either, emergency personnel or volunteers to know that there are animals inside this
Right.
this venue. So
Right.
That helps a lot because when they're running through a neighborhood trying to check every house, if they can eliminate places they don't need to check and go to the ones that they do need to check, and letting people know that you have a pet, like I know in the seaside in Florida building collapse, the homeowners, there's changes now going on with homeowners associations where they're saying, if you have a pet, you need to tell us you have a pet in your home so that if there is a disaster, we know that there may be an animal in there that needs to be rescued. Because that was another thing people were saying, no, my dog was in there, my cat was in there. And they even took drones inside the building before all of it was imploded, just to check to see if they could find something. People may have had birds that could have escaped. And then knowing where to post that animal being missing. That's a
yeah,
huge one. If people know your animal is missing and what it looks like, if it's got a collar, then they know to look out for that animal because they usually stay in the area if they can. And then if somebody sees them and they offer them food and can get them in a crate, they can help you get your animal back. And please microchip your animals. That's the best thing you can do for your animal.
Yes.
yes.
Definitely.
Now, the Red Cross, they actually have a list to help people create a pet emergency kit. And Rochelle, you hit on a lot of them. So they recommend sturdy leashes, harnesses, and or carriers to transport pets safely, and ensure that they don't escape. Food, drinking water, like in bottled water, bowls, cat litters and cat pans, and a manual can opener. If your pet eats canned food, if dry food, then keeping baggies full of that food. Medications and copies of medical records stored in waterproof containers. A first aid kit. So we're talking about preparing like one big bag, like a baby's bag, full of things that you would need for your pet. And it's important to have a first aid kit in there. Current photos of you with your pet in case they get lost. Um, Information on feeding schedules, medical conditions, behavioral problems, and the name and number of your veterinarian in case you have to foster or boarder your pets. And then pet beds and toys, so that it'll make things a little bit less stressful.
Right.
So these are all the things people should think about having together in their pet pet kit for animals and themselves, to be prepared. I think something that Dr. Bryant has always been stating, as well as Rochelle did in our last conversation, if if um, if your pet is used to your crate as their safe space,
Mm-hmm.
when a storm starts, if you can get your pet in that crate and then grab the crate so that you can go, or the carrier so that you can go, I think that'll be one of the best things you can take along with you when you're trying to run out from an emergency.
Yes.
Definitely. The
The,
crate.
the more comfortable they are in the crate, the
Yep.
safer it is for them. However, if you do have a high strung dog, I do know people that have had their dogs bite the crate door and get their teeth stuck on them. So if you can like alter the door so that they can't get their teeth on the door or get a foot stuck in the door, because they're going to be in an altered state. That's another thing people have to understand. When an emergency or a weather event like this is going on, your little Fifi knows you're stressed out and Fifi's stressed out, and that makes it twice as bad because they know you're stressed, they feel that energy. And so in order to calm them down, you have to kind of calm yourself down too, and that helps the animal calm down. So you kind of have to think of it like it's a child, that you don't want them to get upset in an emergency, like a fire drill. The teacher has to stay calm so the children listen to the instructions. You have to be that way with your pet because they are going to cue off of you and your behavior as well. Zoo animals are like that to a fault because they only have so many people that work with them on a daily basis. And so they know those people really well. And if that person is upset or scared, they cue off of that right away.
Let me just say one thing too. The folks that have multi-pets in their household, you might say, oh, they get along normally, right? Don't put them in the same crate or container because, again, it's a stressful environment and they may not be accustomed to, they're stressed. So it's not the normal behavior. So they might even attack each other because of that. So be mindful of that. I would say if you have 3 cats, 2 dogs, each cat has their own shipping container. The dogs have their own, please, because that could be something that could happen and really unexpected. Some things can happen. You don't want that to happen during that time frame. So,
yep, they do.
Now, I will say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say they do things you wouldn't think that they would do. I mean, you put them in a crate overnight, you put them back together, they don't know each other.
Right. Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Now, I will say this, and a lot of times people will miss this, and it's very crucial. It's crucial timing. So every animal in the world, whether they are wild and in the zoo or whether they are your Fifi and in your house, when the weather becomes when it changes and something's about to happen, whether it be a tornado or flooding or a huge fire or even somebody dangerous about to come your way, they will let you know. You have to know your animals and pay attention to the behaviors and the way that they communicate. They will start to make noises. They will move fidgety. When that happens and it's hurricane season, grab your animal, put your dog in the crate, put your cat in the crate. That's your time to put them in the crate, not when the water is coming in the house. This is your few moments to get them in their safe space. And also maybe even gather up your stuff and get to where you can get to just to get out of the way. Rochelle mentioned earlier in our conversation that sometimes if it's just a matter of moving to the next county over. And so you don't have to go states out of the way. But yes, pay attention to your animals. They will let you know when something is coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So our next part of this, we hit the kit pretty well. We can go into the emergency plan. So making a plan. I think that will help keep you organized. I think that will eliminate less stress if you know what to do. And then when your pet looks up at you and says, oh, mommy knows what she's going to do, or daddy knows what he's going to do, hopefully that'll kind of keep them less stressed too. But going back to our friends at the Red Cross, they definitely encourage a plan. And they have these suggestions that I can read to you. Know which hotel and motels along your evacuation route will accept pets in an emergency. That is different from just vacationing. Call ahead for reservations if you know you may need to evacuate. Know which friends, relatives, boarding facilities, animal shelters, and veterinarians can care for your animals in an emergency. Prepare a list. Actually, you got to prepare a list for everything so you're not looking them up later. Include your pet in evacuation drills so that they are used to the fast movement and the thinking and how you're going to be. So once you get a plan together on what you're going to be doing, include them by putting them in the crate and getting them ready to go in the car and to move on. They'll know from experience when it finally comes up for real. Oh, mommy is going, or daddy. I keep saying mommy because I'm a mom, a pet mom. But mom or dad is getting ready to save me now. Make sure that your pet's vaccinations are current and that all dogs and cats are wearing collars with securely fastened up-to-date identification, which goes back to Rochelle's point. Even if you don't want to use a tag and a collar, I think it's best to microchip as well.
Yes.
And then when you microchip, put the information in there, because God forbid they get away, because animals will survive. They will scramble, they will get out, they will survive. But if they get away and they're microchipped, they can be found.
Right. A lot of folks will try to rely on just, it has a collar on, but gosh, that collar can come off. So you need to microchip your pet. Definitely need to have that. And also
register. Because some people will put the microchip in and then they don't fill out the information.
Yes.
So they can't be reunited because they can't be contacted because they don't know who the owner is.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Did I tell you a microchip story? Side note, sorry, just to, I was working with Pet IQ, and this individual, I guess a truck driver or something, were coming from Detroit. They said they found this dog in the streets in Detroit, and they come into Georgia, into Kennesaw, and they're going to get the dog vaccinated and everything. And it's a standard procedure for all veterinarians. We microchip the animals just to see. And lo and behold, that dog actually was owned by somebody up in Detroit, and he brought it down here. And we kind of stayed out of the loop with it as far as getting involved with it, but because we let the corporate Pet IQ do the communication, but stay out of it. But we did find out kind of on the sly side that the pet owner, because they had the pet owner's name, the pet owner actually had put on Facebook that her dog was missing. And yeah. But so ideally, I don't know the outcome. I don't know if he ever brought the dog back to Detroit to be with the original owner, but microchipping does help. It helps to identify. Yeah. And again, most veterinarians or animal facility shelters are going to scan the animals looking for some identification for your pet. So it's very crucial that you do it.
Now, Rochelle, you had submitted some really great points that you wanted to specifically go over with everyone. So I'm going to pop them up as well so that we can discuss those through. And these are your emergency prep tips. You brought up the first one, evacuate or not evacuate.
Sure.
If you do, where do you go?
Yeah. So with exotic animals, you're not going to find a hotel that takes elephants. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So there are certain animals in the zoo that do not get evacuated, and you have to have a facility that can withstand the hurricane or is, flood proof. There are facilities that have had to basically, like even this happens with cattle, like you release the animal and then you capture them after the fact if there's a fire or something. So there's that type of thing. There's also sometimes an animal, you don't have a place for the animal to go, but you're allowed to take it home because you have staff that can take care of the animal. You have the permits. You get with your local fish and game office and you say, hey, we don't have any place to send this animal to. We have staff that's experienced with this species. We want to take them home. Can we get approval to do this? Or you may already have a permit that allows you to do that. So some animals may go home with staff or go even across state lines with staff if you have the authorizations to do that. In some cases, if it's so severe, like with Hurricane Harvey, certain entities with certain species for certain situations were allowed to cross state lines without permits, but that was there was multiple states involved. The wildlife agencies were overwhelmed. Law enforcement was overwhelmed. And you have to make sure you have all your documentation in order, because if you get pulled over or you get checked out, you have to be able to show the proper information. But you can't always evacuate every animal, so you should have animals that can be what they call recall training, where you can call them in at a moment's notice and lock them up, or crate training, which is where the animal is trained to go into a crate, or that is hunkered down in a particular area in the zoo or at some other location. So a lot of the structures in the like down here in Miami are pretty well tested, but this preparation goes in stages. The zoo is part of Miami-Dade County, which has a really awesome, like a well-oiled machine, stages of preparedness for response to a hurricane event, depending on the severity of it. And that's what people need to do, is continually watch what's happening. What's happening with the flood? How many inches are we at now? What do they anticipate? And you start amping up your preparedness. So you have a plan, but you have to have a plan, like not just this plan, but this plan and this plan. And you have different triggers to go to the next level. And something you may not think about, you might have a list of hotels that accept pets, but when they're staging for a severe event, people from other states come into your state, and they will sometimes occupy a hotel that may have been a pet-friendly hotel. So then you also need to have shelters that are pet-friendly. So you need to have a list of those as well. And people with exotic pets rarely can find places for their animals. So usually they have to find another friend that has similar type pets. And in some cases, they may have to have permits to relocate their animals if it's like a non-native species or an injurious or venomous species. So and same would be for zoos if they had a venomous species or class 1 dangerous animal species. So it's not, that's why zoos have to do so much pre-planning, because to move our animals at a moment's notice is not a quick thing. And it requires a lot of pre-planning that doesn't just happen without people knowing in advance, having agreements in advance ahead of time, so that everybody knows, okay, that trigger just switched. Okay, we're in this code now. Now we have to trigger this response. So you have to have a tiered response.
So if I'm a zoo professional listening, and let's say we just started a zoo, could someone reach out to you to put together a really good comprehensive plan as far as emergency preparedness? Is that something you could help
What I
with?
always recommend is for people to contact the local zoo in the state they're in. And the reason I say that is because the regulations are different in each state, even in county to county. Like the southern part of Florida, certain counties allow animals and certain activity, whereas in the northern part of Florida, there are certain counties that allow certain activity with animals. So you really have to have an expert in that area. If they were to contact me, I could give them a recommendation of who to talk to, but I'm not expert in every state, every county, what to do. And there's also wildlife agencies that have their own rules and regulations. And typically, the most rigorous or strict law or rule rules the roost. So even if like the federal rule says you have to put it in a purple crate and the state or county one says it has to be a red crate, it has to go in a red crate, because that's the most rigorous rule, and that's what is the requirement that has to be met, because you'll still be meeting the other requirement, if it's a lower or lesser requirement.
Okay. And then also in the same vein, if it was a pet owner of snakes or, some other type of reptile or exotic, hopefully not an exotic animal, but could they give you a call?
Well, and in
Could they
that
give you?
case as well, so different states handle different species of reptiles differently. Like in Florida, there are certain species that are outlawed as pets, and you have to have a permit to have them. And so, I would want to make sure that if anybody, is reaching out for help, that needs help with that animal, and it's an emergency, for sure, anybody that's in an emergency situation, please, reach out. There's also organizations that have now been fine-tuned, actually. There's an organization that's specifically for exotic animals called ZDR3. That is, you sign an MOU with them, that you can either be a supporter or you can be a participant and a member of that organization. And they will come to your facility. They will help you out with cleanup. They'll bring food. They help with, they come in with chainsaws, literally, and for weeks will stay at a facility helping to clean up. That's what happened during Hurricane Ian. And I can provide you with that information if you want to post it on your website. But it's primarily for exotic animal species, and places like zoos. But sometimes there'll be a small collection of animals in a little town that nobody knows is a zoo there, that an event will happen and all of a sudden the city goes, oh, we don't know what to do to help these people, and they get called in. Or something happens in Guam and they get called in and they didn't even know there was a zoo there. So if you posted that information, then it would help people like that aren't aware of ZDR3.
I think the most part where there's a lot more information out for your pet, your dogs and your cats, but for those
exactly
exotic animals, that's crucial. That needs to be out there somewhere, because if I've got I hate to say it, there's some people that have potentially venomous snakes and they keep as pets,
yes,
and all these different things, or even just a routine snake. I would hope in an emergency situation you'd still bag it up properly. I believe double bag it or something, so that, and also I always say, I say this for transportation, make sure the containers are labeled properly so people know what they're dealing with.
Exactly.
But tell me what kind of snake. If it's venomous, write down the common and scientific name, because God forbid somebody get bit, you can get an anti-venom for it. But if you don't listen, that person's at risk. So
And certain states have really, really good professional clubs that are reptile, parrot, different species. Like, I know that some states don't allow ferrets, but there are ferret clubs in those states, and they have a lot of educated people that know a lot about ferrets. So even though they may be banned in that state, people can reach out to them and find out about, other people that can help them. Right. So there's a lot of knowledgeable people out there, that, I could potentially help them find one of those people, but I'm not an expert in everything. So that's my disclaimer. Rochelle's not an expert in everything, but I might know who to tell you to talk to.
That's actually even better. I always say, no one is expected to know everything, but you know how to find things. You know how to put things together. So that's awesome.
Right.
It's good.
That's great. Another emergency prep conversation that you wanted to touch on. I'm not sure if you guys can see it. Oh, there we go. Is crate prep. So if you to train the animals to know that their crate is a safe place. So I know we mentioned that with our domestic conversation, But what happens with the zoos and the exotic animals? Can you walk us through that?
Sure. So, a long time ago, I worked at this private facility that we would take animals on TV and stuff. And I had these small hand reared primates. And so I had to get this baby baboon used to being in a soft sided crate for the travel and for being able to walk around. So what I did was I would put her in it and just walk around the building with it. Then I'd walk around outside in the public area, and people didn't even know she was in there because she was quiet and she just sat in the crate. And just she started liking it because she could watch people and she felt safe because she was behind this screen, so it was kind of like fun. It's like a kid going out in a car, they get to see everything. So if you have a dog that you're trying to acclimate to a soft cider crate, similar type situation. The animals don't get used to it until they do it a bunch of times. Even like in the design of the exhibits in Zoo Miami, where I used to work, when I was a zookeeper there, the hallways had these what they called restraint devices, or in the old days we used to call them squeeze cages. But we don't really squeeze the animals. It's to restrain them so that the vet can either give them an injection or maybe they need to get a vaccination. And they don't want to immobilize the animal every time because it's not good to immobilize the animals all the time. So they would be trained to go in and out of this hallway before they go into their cages at night, where they have to be secured because that's what the regulations say for dangerous animals. So the animals would get used to that. You could even train them that, like, you close it up, give them a reward, and they would get used to that so they wouldn't get stressed. And so it was something that was like a routine. They have to go through the hallway to get outside. They have to go through the hallway to get inside to get their food. So all of this stuff, the more you do it, the more routine it is. Don't start a week before. Make it a part of their daily routine. Maybe, you take them out for a walk, you bring them in, they go in the crate. You leave them in there for a while, walk away, walk out of the room, come back in, open the door, make them sit, call them out, give them a treat. It's got to be something that's not out of the norm so that they get used to it.
Okay.
Definitely.
So with crate training, so I know that reptiles are mostly kept in, I can imagine, like aquariums. Mm-hmm. So when it comes to an evacuation, reptiles and such, does the crate training really apply to them, or what is the evacuation plan for them in the case that they're in?
So it depends on what kind of reptiles it is. Like if it's a large animal, you want to have them in a building that's secure. You want to have, because you don't want to be moving 200-pound snakes. Those are part of the animals that may not get, moved out. Now, it may be an animal that's on loan to you from another institution, and that institution may say, hey, we're going to come down and pick up Petunia, and because we would like to take her off your hands, so you don't have to worry about her. They may really like that snake, and they don't want that anaconda or whatever to possibly cause a problem for the zoo if it gets out, or to possibly if the zoo has a really bad after event, to have a problem with that snake dying from the event. So sometimes zoos will come in and help you by taking their animals. Most of the time, that's not what happens. But the ones that they worry the most about are birds, because especially if you have a large aviary, which was the case like with Hurricane Andrew, only certain birds in that aviary were evacuated. The majority of the birds stayed in that aviary. And there were some birds that were in that aviary, like there was a wood stork that was left in the aviary. And when the hurricane happened and the aviary came down, they just let the wood stork go because it was native to this area. And I don't know if they saw it around in the area for a while, but it was basically released to the wild. So, in some cases, there'll be situations like that. If it's a rehab animal, sometimes you can't let them go because they may have an injured wing and can't take care of themselves if they get released to the wild. So in those cases, you would have to bring them inside, or in some cases, like with wildlife rehab facilities, we've been asked when I was working at the zoo, hey, can you help us take some of our pelicans or our not penguins, but pelicans, because we need to take in some other animals and they're in big cages and we need to put a bunch of birds in that cage. And that would free up some space for us so that we can get these animals into secure places before the hurricane gets here. So stuff like that happens with cooperation between institutions. So, but it's a case by case basis. What is the animal? How big is it? What kind of facility does it need? Does it have a power backup need? If it's an aquarium, basically, if you lose power, everything that's in the water is going to die.
Oh my.
So you have to figure, okay, are we going to save the electric eel, the stingrays? There might be fish that you can replace, and you have to make that decision. Can we replace these fish or not? Stingrays are easy to catch and move and put into another, sometimes they would move them for emergency purposes only. It's not sustainable for long term, but they would put kiddie pools in the hospital and air pumps in the water for like emergency purposes until they could go back into their exhibits, so there's always that type of a way of dealing with it. Now that it's a lot more sophisticated, they've got propane tanks, power backups. The area is built in an area of the zoo that is not prone to flooding. The exhibits, when they're built, are built with that type of event in mind and what they have to do to be able to sustain it.
Wow.
Oh, wow. So twice now I've heard you say how wild animals are going to be released and if nothing else can happen. So now I know where to go when these big events happen, so I can go find me a lion or two.
Well, they wouldn't release any lions.
No, yeah. That would be
In fact, when the war in Ukraine started, those were some of the first animals that they considered evacuating at all. Because if they did get out, there was no way they could prevent them from killing people. A carnivore, their mentality and their mindset is so predatory. It's like it's not like a primate where you can reason with them. It's the carnivore, the carnivore, anything that eats meat or eats people, they were trying to get it out. But the facilities at the zoo are so substantial. It's concrete walls that are like a foot or so thick, and steel inside of it, and they board up the sides so that the animals don't have any objects flying at them. Even the bedrooms are made in such a way that the door where they go into the bedroom, which is raised up, a platform, it's not exposed to anything. Like you can put a barricade there to make the metal bars covered so that nothing can fly in the cage to get at them. And they just hunker down. With the orangutans, when I was a primate keeper, we'd give them the 50-gallon drums cut in half, and we'd give them burlap so they could have blankets and stuff. And they'd take their 50-gallon drums up there, and they'd just get in there and cover themselves up and be inside their bedroom. They'd be all hunkered down.
Oh, that's great. Now, the third topic that you brought up for the zoos are medications and first aid supplies. So for zoos, are there standard things that everyone should have in their kit?
Yeah, for zoos, it's a little more complicated because some of the medications that we use in zoos are actually handmade. Some of them, the veterinarians make them themselves. Some of them, like what they really worry about a lot is having enough immobilizing drugs because unfortunately, in today's day and age, with drug use, some of the animal narcotics have been used by drug dealers, and sometimes they're hard to get for the veterinarians. And so that makes a problem because if they don't have, and that happened during COVID, their supply of immobilizing drugs was getting sparse, and they had to actually decide, okay, are we going to do an annual physical, or are we going to save this in case we have an emergency and we have to immobilize a tiger? So immobilizing drugs, antibiotics, first aid drugs. And what people have to always be thinking, the same medicine people use is not always the same you use for an animal. People can kill their animals by thinking they can use human medication. And the best way to think about being prepared for your animal is when it's time for you to refill your drugs and get ready for a hurricane, look to your veterinarian and say, hey, I'm getting ready with my medication. What do I need to get for my dog? What kind of first aid supplies? What kind of other things do I need if it gets diarrhea, if it gets an upset stomach, if it gets a fever? What do I use for my animal?
That's good. Another interesting thing as far as the prescriptions to consider for that too. A lot of folks will go outside of their veterinary office and go get them prescription filled, maybe, I don't know, at a Chewy, Walmart, or whatever. Be aware, if it's prescribed, say every 30 days, they're not going to give you more than a 30-day supply. So you're going to have to go speak with your veterinarian to make sure you have ample supplies. So do that definitely in advance in preparing for situations like this.
Now, I asked this question to both of you, Dr. Bryant, for your common pet like cats and dogs, and Rochelle for owners of reptiles and exotic animals. Is there a standard set of medications we should pack in our emergency kit? Like Rochelle, you brought up, like if they were to get upset stomach. So I know not to give them Pepto-Bismol, but is there something else we should have in there? Or, what do you both recommend pet parents to have?
Exotic pet parents could be parrot owners, snake owners. I mean,
yeah, it's a difficult thing. But to be honest with you, to me, first aid kits like that, I could see having bandages, something, if there's a cut, how to do that, keeping these clean, peroxide or alcohols. When it comes to medications, I'm not really comfortable with saying they need to have a certain medication. So if they're vomiting, do this. I don't think you should do that. I honestly say try to consult with a veterinarian in reference to that. I don't like over-the-counter stuff with certain things because they're misused, unfortunately. A lot of times, and I always say, Dr. Google might say do this, but it's probably not the smartest thing you can do for your pet. So I would say your first aid kit is just something for, like with us, if we get an injury, how to take care of if a wound bleeds, or I don't know, cut myself, bandage, have stuff available. I mean, God forbid, if your dog or cat breaks their leg, find something maybe you could potentially have in there, maybe to splint it temporarily, something like that. But
one thing I can say, vet wrap is the duct tape of the first aid response for animals. We call it vet wrap in the zoo world, but it's this tape. It looks like a first aid bandage, but it's sticky, And you can
Yeah.
actually use it for anything.
Yeah,
I mean, and it adheres to itself. That stuff is the most useful stuff if you don't have a Band-Aid, and it can conform to any part of the body. And
Yeah.
it's very useful in a first aid kit for an animal. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even
You
going
know,
back to medications, oh, I'm sorry, just one more thing. But the medications, you just have to be really careful, because we might say a first aid kit, I don't know, we might have aspirin, Tylenol, or something available for us, but you have to be mindful of the fact that that's actually toxic to certain pets. Dogs and cats can't take that. I mean, I think for cats in general with Tylenol, you can just kill your cat if you give it Tylenol. So you have to be aware of that. You know what makes me think of also, just a thought too, the Poison Control Center will have all the medications that are toxic to pets. So that might be good to folks to kind of keep in mind. If you do want to have something, or if you think you want to give something to your pet, consult the Poison Control line. And I'm sorry, I'm trailing off, but it just popped in my head of
No, and something I just thought of too is saline solution is great for cleaning, flushing a wound, because it's not going to sting, so you're not going to get a reaction from the animal, so it doesn't burn, but it's going to have some disinfecting properties, and it's good for flushing the wound. So maybe like a large syringe where you can flush a wound with saline solution, or what they call wound care solution that humans use. It's sort of like a similar type thing. And I don't think that that would be toxic to animals, because it's basically saline solution.
Right.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, I was thinking that probably the medications would be more of a personalized thing, and that people should consult their veterinarians as, what they should have on the side and put in the kit. But I didn't know if, like I said, if there was a Pepto-Bismol of the animal world that we could put in there.
Well, and even some pets have skin conditions and they can't use betadine. Some, I mean, that's why it's like, it depends on what your particular pet's health issues are and what your veterinarian recommends, because they're going to know the health history of that animal and what its little unique quirks are. And like in the zoo, species by species, there's different things that you can do and can't do depending on the species. So it's hard to make a broad statement about what needs to be in there. So sorry.
Yeah, but as you said, things to help prevent, say if there's a wound, if they're bleeding, stuff to control that, I think, are ideal for a kit and everything. And of course, yes, if your pet has prescribed medication, make sure you have that available for them. But a routine other vomiting or diarrhea, for that short period of time, they're just might have to deal with it, and hopefully the vomiting won't be extensive, or the diarrhea won't be too extensive.
Yeah, and even in that case, if they, drink, lactated ringers or like Pedialyte, I don't think, is Pedialyte bad for pets?
No, I think that.
I would go with the children's version of Pedialyte just to be on the safe side. Because I don't know how big people's pets are, but Pedialyte is an electrolyte fluid replacer. So if they are having stuff coming out of both ends, they for sure are going to get dehydrated. And you don't want them getting dehydrated when you don't have electricity and your AC is out and it's hot, and they're losing fluids. So getting fluids into them would be a very important thing to do.
Okay, that's a really good segue into your last emergency prep. So I guess people should keep a bottle of Pedialyte in their emergency kit to help out their animals to avoid dehydration. But you brought up in your last one food supplies, especially for exotic diets. So I wanted to give you a chance to speak on that as well.
Yeah. So with so for example, you have snakes. If you don't have power and you don't have a generator, some people have rodent colonies. And so that would be one way. If you have a small rodent colony, you could still feed your animal and not have to worry about not being able to get food for your animal, because reptiles don't eat every day like a mammal does or like a bird does. So they can go longer periods of time without food. However, like if most people don't have hummingbirds as pets, but wildlife rehab facilities may have hummingbirds because they rescue them. Those animals can die. Their metabolism is so high that if they're being shipped, they can starve to death in a long flight from one end to the other. So you have to have food for those animals, and you have to have specialized diets for insectivores, for herbivores, certain types of animals like koalas, which is why when Hurricane Andrew happened, they had to evacuate the koala because they just eat eucalyptus leaves. There's no replacement for their diet. So they had to evacuate the koala out, and it had to go by private jet because there was no other flights out that could take the koala to where it needed to go. So until the browse farm could be put back in order and growing browse again, they couldn't get the koalas back to the zoo. So there's certain animals that just can't stay for other reasons than you can't buy the diet. It's grown, so that's how special that diet was.
It's interesting. So it sounds like to me in a zoo setting, you guys have animals prioritized, which ones in order, this one has to go and this one has to go, which ones can sustain and all that, in that environment.
Right. And so, like, for example, with the reptiles, if we know that we may have a pretty big event coming, back when I was a keeper at Zoo Miami, they used to have a contract for a refrigerated truck. Now they've installed propane tanks, and they have power backups and extra freezer and refrigerator units to put the food. But I'm not sure if the collection has grown enough that they still have that on hand, that it's a backup plan that if they need it. Because I know sometimes if they have to ship an animal during the hot season, they will rent refrigerated trucks for shipping animals. They don't make it that cold on the inside like a refrigerator, but it's like an air-conditioned truck so that they can do an animal shipment when it's too hot to ship animals. So if they had to evacuate an animal during hurricane season, it definitely would be very hot. Like right now, our heat indexes are up in the 3 digits. So even though our temperatures are in the 90s, we have heat indexes over 100. So shipping an animal now could be deadly. But if we had a hurricane and we had to get somebody out of here, we would probably rent a refrigerated truck, to move an animal, because if that's the only way you can get them out, that's the only way you can get them out.
Very interesting.
Wow. Dr. Bryant, do you recommend maybe like for emergency situations, certain foods or that pet parents should think about putting in their emergency kits? Like, is there a...
Well, I would recommend them getting their normal diet and having supplies of their normal diet, because again, we mentioned earlier, vomiting and diarrhea. If you switch an animal's diet quickly, you might see those signs, and you don't want that to happen. So with all the stress that's going on, the normal things that we're accustomed to, the diet, as far as what they're eating, it's important to stay consistent with that. Then also too, the water supply will be very significant too. So I would definitely recommend having enough bottled water for yourself and for your pets during when you're evacuating, because again, believe it or not, the water system is not ideal for, no routine water. When floods and stuff like that happen, our normal water systems, as far as I guess purification and the things they do, a lot of times they're shut down. So you might be giving your pet something that's contaminated potentially. So the best bet is have enough bottled water supply for everybody in the whole family, including the pets.
Yeah, like in Florida, when we prepare for hurricane season, I have a 5-gallon water bottle that I fill up with tap water instead of going to the store and buying bottled water.
Mhm.
And I have a pump that I put on it so that I can use that. You're supposed to have estimated a gallon of water per person per day. That's not including cooking water, washing water, or anything like that, or pet water. So
That's
that's
good.
a lot of water.
So you said that, and in my mind, I was like, dang, I wonder how much you need to have for pets. Do you have any idea for your dogs and cats?
It depends on how big the pet is.
Yeah, where we go again. Yeah, it all depends on what they are, but you need to have.
And it depends on if it's a bird, and if you're giving water in a Lixit bottle, or if you're giving it in a bowl and some of it's splashing out. Maybe train your dog to drink from a Lixit bottle so that you waste less water and you can control how much water they drink, they waste. There's a lot of things too, like if you think about it ahead of time, if you have a treat that you know that they will like every single time, use that treat when you need it for emergencies, to get them in the crate or to calm them down, or to, in an emergency situation. So yes, they're normal diet, but yes, they're normal treats too, because if they really like a certain treat, you can put like a relaxant in there that's maybe prescribed by your doctor to calm them down so that they're not biting themselves or barking and stressing out, because some veterinarians do recommend that type of thing for your pet. If it's an older pet, you got to really be careful, because older pets have other issues too. And when you start giving them meds and stuff, then, you have other issues.
Right. So yeah, I would say whatever, consult with your veterinarian if need be for, I guess you could say, something to control the anxiety of the situation. Basically, is what's going to happen. But again, you definitely, it's not a one stop where you think it's going to fit all your pets, dogs or cats, because if they have an underlying medical condition, it can be made worse and cause, who knows, liver disease or what have you, cause further sedation in your pet and further decline, and you don't want to have a medical emergency as such.
Right.
A disaster like that.
It's going to be hard to find a veterinarian then.
Yep.
Well, I'm glad Rochelle brought this up, because it was a point it was almost like an aha moment for me. But in the preparation part, to train your cat, dog, or whatever animal you may have to not just a bowl, but I think you called it an Lixit bottle, which is like what a hamster has.
A little metal thing that comes down and they lick it. Yep. And it's easy to train a dog. You just put like maybe a little bit of peanut butter or something that it likes the flavor of, and you just put it on there and it licks it, and then it realizes it's getting water. But you have to be careful it doesn't get any dents on the end, because then it'll just keep dripping and then all the water comes out.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that is definitely a great tip, because what if there are no bowls, or if you forgot your bowl, or, whatever the case may be. So, and this is smaller than a bowl to pack in your bag, and will save water, so it won't waste and get all over the place, just as you pointed out. So that was a great, great tip for our pet parents to know. I know that. Wow, we didn't even talk about Dr. Bryant in the beginning. We started off with you and we still went late. This session was so powerful, and I'm so glad that we had you back. I just wanted to finish out with telling people that they can definitely go to the Red Cross, their website, so that they can learn more information. Their website is redcross.org, and it should be showing up. It says... Okay, redcross.org. I also wanted to let everyone know that they can download their free Red Cross first aid app, so that you'll know what to do in a case of emergency, and if help is delayed, and the free emergency app for weather alerts, open Red Cross shelter locations, and safety steps for different emergencies. So this is a great tool for everyone to have. Pet owners can download the Red Cross First Aid app for more information on how to include pets in emergency preparedness plan and step-by-step instructions for first aid emergencies and more. And also I'd like to recommend another website, which is the ASPCA. They are very involved with
Yes.
all emergencies. And so they have a great resource library of things to know, things to prepare for, and all of that good stuff. So these two websites I definitely recommend for everyone. And so I wanted to give Ms. Rochelle and Dr. Bryant any last minute words that you'd like to share with everyone. I just don't want to be like if we're on Zoom, you know, Zoom will cut you off in a minute. So
We've learned that it won't shut down now. At least we've learned that it won't. Because remember before we used to panic, we're like, oh my God, it's time. We're calm now. We can talk another hour if we wanted to, you know? So we're fine. So, but no, I would just add one thing too, because we spoke before we started the session as far as something that a pet parent can do as well. Is finding in your area links to pet-friendly locations, potentially if need be, if you have to travel. And I believe you said named was it Bring Fido? Was the name of the link?
Yes. On our website, we have under Dr. Bryant's favorite things tab. So if you go to winpets.com and then go over to our tab at the top, which says Dr. Bryant, it says favorite things. And then if you don't even have to scroll down too far, but it is the second choice listed. Bring Fido, which a lot of you may know is a website that lists top pet-friendly hotels and resorts worldwide. So this is a great resource to start your investigation on hotels and resorts near you. Give them a call, email them, ask them in the case of an emergency, will they allow for you and your pet to join them?
Yep. Anything else to add?
And then also, let's see,
I would like
Rochelle,
to say
is there
you also need to check to see if there are any shelters that are pet friendly in your area if you're choosing to go to a shelter. And if you go to a shelter, you have to make sure you have all your vaccination records, the tag, and all of that, because they won't let you come in with your pet if you don't have that proof of vaccination.
Yeah, extremely important because, I mean, in this environment, this is when a lot of infectious diseases are going to be transmitted between pets. So make sure they're vaccinated and up current with all their vaccinations to prevent that transmission between your pets. So
exactly, especially when they're in close quarters and stress and
definitely. No, good.
Absolutely. And then Rochelle, also, is there any last words you'd like to say about zoos as well?
Just that people know that now there's a lot of work and collaboration, but it wasn't always that way. And I know Dr. Bryant mentioned Katrina. When Hurricane Katrina hit, Miami Metro Zoo is the name that Zoo Miami used to be called. And our general curator went to the annual AAZPA conference, it used to be called then, and it was in New Orleans. And he got up in front of the group and said, we don't have any connection to any of these emergency plans, and we're on our own. We have to do something to change this. And that's when the first zoo crisis group started. And now it's developed into, we're helping wildlife agencies with oil spills. We're helping wildlife rehabbers. Everything has changed from that. USDA, when there's an avian influenza outbreak, they don't just come in and euthanize all our birds. We work together with them. They know that we're putting our birds undercover so they don't get exposed. We're vaccinating them. So there's a lot more collaboration with the federal agencies than there used to be. And we're actually partnering with them, and in some cases, working to help other animals besides the zoo animals. So, and then our staff also work with some of the domestic animal facilities like SPCA or the the local Audubon agencies and things like that. So all of these things have come out of people just realizing there aren't enough exotic animal people out there to help when there's an emergency. And so everybody's kind of gotten the idea that we all need to help each other.
Yeah.
So, Rochelle, are there any websites? I know I recommended Red Cross, I recommended the ASPCA for pet parents. Are there any websites that you can recommend for zoos and exotic animal owners? I know you mentioned ZDR3.
Yes, ZDR3 and ZAHP, ZAHP, Zoo All Hazards Partnership. It is a USDA driven partnership with a group that is now under the American Zoo and Aquarium Veterinary Group. And the zoo veterinarians are now the umbrella agency for this group. And it is for anybody that wants to go to that website. They can get information about, like it's got information about Save the Flock, about avian influenza. Like if you have birds in your backyard, like if you have ducks or chickens or things like that, how to protect those birds from avian influenza. It also is for exotic animal pet owners, and it also is for zoos and aquariums. So it's like a multifaceted umbrella that helps with protecting in different things, disasters for flooding, fire, and there's a lot of veterinarians that are involved with that group. And that's why it kind of was a natural transition for that organization to come out of the AZA umbrella and go under the American Association of Zoo Veterinarians.
Fantastic. Well, we gave like a chock full of information in this hour and 15 minutes, and I think the three of us could keep on talking.
Yes.
So if you both have any last words, we should probably end our conversation here, and definitely bring Rochelle back because we had a lot of interactions with this great conversation and all that good stuff. So if you both have any last minute words to say to everyone.
I'm just happy that Rochelle was here with us, and yes, she's going to be someone that we have to keep with us. Just valuable information to share. She's an amazing person. I love that we met. So I like you around. So definitely I'll have you back again. Yep.
I think you're pretty cool too.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, it's been a great one. I would just say, what's our next week? We have who's going to be on with us, Greta? You have it written. I should have had it written.
I'm so sorry. I usually add on.
I'll just put it this way: for the next forthcoming weeks, we're going to have someone scheduled. I believe, isn't it Beth on our next one with Smart? Yes, it is Beth with Smart Parks, or either way, Beth Holmes is going to be with us next week, and she's going to be discussing pet-friendly accommodations and dog parks. Is going to be related with that. So that's going to be our next discussion. But we have a lot of cool things planned for this actually July coming through. We're also going to have someone from USDA, a veterinarian from USDA that's going to be talking about the pet travel website to get people prepared for international pet travel. So that's coming too. So we just got a lot of cool things set up for this month and months to come.
Yes. The rest of July, each Friday, we have another Facebook Live, which we've never had them week after week, but it's just the way everybody's schedule came up for us. So we have a lot of information, great information that is going to be coming everyone's way. I'm actually waiting now for the flyer to pull up. So for next, come on you, for, let's see. Of course, you know, computers are going to move slow when you want them to move fast. So, you know, here we go. So next Friday, the 21st, we have Wagtown, the owner of Wagtown is going to be coming in.
I know it's Beth Holmes.
Yes, yes. She's going to talk about her company as well as Smart Parks and what she's doing to help make dog parks a safer, funner place for our dogs. The week after that, on July 28th, we have the USDA coming in to join us to talk about pet travel regulations. So that's our next 2 weeks in July. So, and then of course, I think you mentioned that we're going into August with one. So I just don't have that up and prepared for me right now. But the next 2 weeks are going to be some great conversations in July.
Yep. Well, thank you, Rochelle. We will have you back. We'll have we'll trust me. We can always think of something, and we can always have a good conversation with you. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I wish everyone a great Friday afternoon and the rest of their weekend. Please, I think you should watch this recording a few times to get all of the golden nuggets between being a pet parent and being somebody with an exotic animal and working in the zoos. But thank you again, Rochelle, for all your knowledge. Thank you, Dr. Bryant, for all your knowledge. This was just very important to me because, you know, these natural disasters come around like clockwork, and it's so sad to see you know, the devastation and the confusion and the lost pets because we as humans were not prepared. So now we're helping to make sure they are.
Definitely.
Well, everyone, you have a great afternoon, and we'll catch you next Friday. Thanks again.
Stay cool, literally.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
I pushed the end broadcast. Now you know my computer. It's still going?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I did push it. You know, my computer has the delayed. I think it's on summer